All right, Tom, I think we're all set
All right,
and ready.
we on?
We're on.
All right, welcome to the Tom and Dave Show. It's April 14th, Wednesday night. You know what that means. We are back. We are talking about injuries tonight. It's a little bit of a downer subject, but let's get right into it. Jamal Murray tore his ACL Sunday night, I believe.
Hmm.
It was Sunday night, I think. Yeah, it was the second night of a back-to-back. It was the final minute of a game that was pretty much decided, and he just landed non-contact and, crumpled as a lot of players do when they suffer an injury like that. Uh, it was sad. I feel like this one, I don't know about you, Dave, but I feel like this one kind of hurt to see a lot more than some, not to like make this an injury Olympics of any sort, but like it did feel like this one struck a chord with a lot of people in the basketball world to a greater extent than some of the other injuries that have happened this year.
Yeah, I think that's definitely just due to the fact that the Nuggets are a very lovable team. Everyone is really excited about the Murray Jokic duo. Their new addition with Aaron Gordon was working out so well. It was really looking like the Nuggets were kind of going to build off of what they did last year, where they made the conference finals and actually maybe push for a title here, with the West being feeling a little wide open, with the two teams at the top being kind of unproven. The Lakers having these injury struggles. It really looked like, this was such a good opportunity for them to make it. And I think everyone was kind of on their side there. I think people like to see the underdog story of, this team beating, these superpowered LA teams. And yeah, Jamal Murray just seems like he's one of the most liked guys in the league. Always has great energy about him. And I think when you see a young player on a good team like this that has a real chance of winning go down like this, and when it's an ACL, it's going to be 10 months to a year.
Yeah.
So,
And that's 10 months to a year just to get back on the court. And then,
yeah,
God willing that you do return to the level you were at, that's another, multiple month long endeavor.
yeah. We've seen with, different injuries, obviously, but we've seen with,
Yeah.
someone like Paul George, took him could say 2 or 3 years to really get back to the player he was.
Oh, yeah.
Gordon Hayward seems like now he is finally getting back to that position he was in Utah 4 years ago. These can take a while. I think the positive comparison that a lot of people were making was Zach LaVine tore his ACL when he was 22, and look at where he's at now. Murray's a little older; he's 24.
That's a really good point.
But then you also have guys not to bring a downer point, but you have guys like Jabari Parker, who was never the same after he tore his ACL, and never was able to reach.
Or to make another Chicago comparison, you have Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose, yeah. So you gotta. It's tough. I believe he'll come back strong. But yeah, it's just such a bummer, and we feel like we've just had a whole string of injuries this year. We've had an absurd number of ACL tears. We had Jamal Murray, we had Markelle Fultz, we had Jonathan Isaac, we had, who am I missing? There's 2 more.
Let's see. I will say though, I'm glad you took it here because I feel like Jamal Murray's injury kind of struck such a chord for a few reasons, and one of them, like you touched on, was how young he is and how much of a part of this Nuggets team that's really exciting and really promising he is. I think another part of it is just that he's so inseparable. Jamal Murray is probably the biggest stock raiser from the bubble. in terms of just like going into it versus coming out. Nobody really elevated their reputation more than he did in there. And then coming out of the bubble, like we all knew this season was going to be sort of like the evil we have to, or like the acceptable imperfection, where it has to be, well, we're going to play a lot more games in a relatively short time. It's going to be less rest coming from last season into this season, but this is what we have to do to try and keep the money coming in, keep the lights on in some places. And yeah, it was just, it was going to be kind of a thing that you grit your teeth and get through. But then, of course, this injury happens, and I feel like it's really tough to separate this injury, especially with a player who was so synonymous with the bubble and all that happened in it. It's tough to separate this injury from a lot of the decisions the league made and a lot of the circumstances that they put these players in.
Yeah. Another ACL tear this year
the
was.
Miami Heat, what are they currently?
Sorry, I just wanted to chime in because I missed it. Another ACL tear this year was Thomas Bryant, presumable Wizards starting center for the season. Another young guy. Mm-hmm. The Heat are currently 27 and 26, or no, 28 and 26.
And how many games are they playing? Like, what is it, 8 and 11 days?
It's
right now.
It's 8 and 12 days. We're in the middle of a 3 and 4 nights scenario right now. That is Phoenix, and then that was Portland, and then a Phoenix Denver back to back.
Yeah.
I mean, this is right after the Heat had one of these injuries with Victor Oladipo, which we really don't know that much about yet. With someone like Depot, it's hard to tell. He's always been kind of an injury prone guy, so I don't know if I want to necessarily blame the season on him, on his injury. But then you got
he's somebody that was just starting to try and come back from a catastrophic injury of his own.
Yeah, exactly. He had LaMelo Ball. I mean, that was a different injury. That was a hand. James Wiseman just tore his meniscus.
Yeah.
It's hard to. I don't know. I feel like you always feel a little gutted every time you see one of these reports, one of these tweets come in, especially when it's a young player. And it brings a lot of questions, like you were saying, about how quickly the season started. For the Heat, for the Lakers, for the Nuggets, for the Celtics, it was a super quick turnaround. And we have, I guess the Celtics haven't had a serious injury, but the other three teams have had serious.
They haven't had a serious injury.
Sorry?
But to be fair, also, the Celtics haven't really been fully healthy at any point this season.
Actually, they did have a serious injury. Because of
they had
Marcus Smart.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, you figure they had Kemba kind of nicked up at the start of the year. Right when Kemba starts to get healthy, Smart goes down. They're, I think, just now getting everyone back from that.
Yeah.
Or back on the same court together. LeBron and AD are out for the Lakers. Jamal Murray has now gone down for the Nuggets. I mean, you know better than I do. How many people have missed time on the Heat this year? Like Goran.
So many.
Butler missed some games, although he had COVID.
Yeah, to be fair, most of the guys that have missed time on the Heat are COVID related, but Goran missed a lot of time with an injury. Avery Bradley, when he was still on the team, missed a ton of time with an injury, although that's actually not the same scenario because Avery didn't even play in the bubble. So I'm not sure he should count. I think you really see it with Goran Dragic. A little, like a secret of Heat fans this year that I think no one wants to admit is that Dragic has been pretty bad for the last 2 months. And there's a lot of games where he just gives us nothing. He's now in full protocol of not playing back-to-backs, too. He won't be playing tonight. And his game just kind of, the super aggressive Dragic just kind of running at the rim is not really there right now. He's just kind of taking a lot of long threes and settling a lot. And yeah, that makes you think back to the bubble when he got injured in the bubble, tried to come back in the bubble, which was his own decision. So I don't want to blame the
Yeah.
league for that. But
Yeah.
when you think about the fact that LeBron James has never had a serious injury until the season with the shortest recovery time he's had, it makes you think.
Oh yeah. Um, so I mean, yeah, it's sad. Looking forward, at least for the Nuggets. Well, first of all, obviously we hope Jamal Murray makes like a complete and full recovery, and like if you hear stories about how hard he's worked off the court just to
Mhm.
be where he is in basketball, like there's no doubt in my mind, Dave, I'm sure you would co-sign this, that he's going to be working like an animal to get back.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, I mean, we both hope that he makes that full recovery that some guys seem to be able to make these days
hmm
from ACL injuries.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
yeah, I would highly recommend. Tom and I were talking about it earlier. The little like 10-minute podcast episode that Zach Lowe put out yesterday about Jamal Murray. It was a really
mhm,
nicely written, pretty much like like an essay almost about Jamal, about his experiences interviewing with Jamal, and the types
yeah,
of crazy trainings that Jamal would go through with his father when he was younger,
mhm.
and just like the, you know, type of work ethic he has and the type of person he is. It was really sweet, very sad, but yeah, it's interesting because Jamal isn't like a guy who I think anyone would consider like a top 20, 25 player. Maybe he's
Mhm.
in the 20 to 25 range or something, but his injury has completely wrecked the league mood wise.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, it's really sad. But on a bit of a switch, looking forward to the rest of this season. I mean, what do you think this means for the Nuggets?
Um, I think I could still see the Nuggets winning a series in the playoffs. Um, the tough
Mhm.
part now is that with Jamal out, so you're going to get a lot of Monte Morris and
Yeah,
a lot of Campazzo. Um, both guys I think are pretty decent backup point guards. So it's not like it's a downgrade. It's a big downgrade, but it's not like you're going to
yeah,
zero. It's like those. I think those guys are capable. Um, but it
yeah.
obviously changes the way that they play on offense significantly. So I am a little worried about them slipping a little bit in the standings and being
Yeah.
kind of screwed over with a, I don't know, a 6-3 Clippers matchup or something like that. I mean, we know what happened with the Clippers last year,
Oh yeah.
but then without Jamal against the Clippers, with
That's a
how,
big part of that with Jamal Murray.
yeah, and with how hot the Clippers have been, I don't know. They're looking like a different team right now. Um, so
Yeah, I think they've won what?
yeah, something like that. I think they could win a first round matchup if they can get Portland, maybe,
Yeah.
but that's about it.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of go from like Western Conference contender potentially to like potential second round team, but would have to get the right matchup. I mean, I think we on our preseason episodes of this show, we played the game of like who's the five, like who's closing games for this team. And if you want to take a slightly varied approach of that and play like who's your, I don't know, who's your nine that you're playing in the playoffs? It's really tough if you lose the second name that you can think of in those nine,
Yeah.
because you have to account for a lot of minutes in a lot of really hard to win games, and there's no guarantee. Like Faku, Monte Morris, they're really good basketball players. They're not Jamal, but they're really good basketball players. But it's just that sort of like patching over work that you have to do now that you didn't when you had Jamal Murray healthy.
Yeah.
So I think that's like it becomes a little bit more of an inexact science from a coaching perspective and from like a lineup perspective. But I still think they can make some noise. I mean, as long as Jokic stays healthy, that team's never really out of anything, I
Yeah.
don't think.
No, definitely. Um, yeah, I think it just kind of makes the West a little bit less fun at the end of the day. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, we still have four teams, I think, who have really good chances of making the finals, though. So I think it'll still be all
Oh
right.
yeah,
But I think the team that everyone wanted to see make that push was Denver. So yeah, it's a bummer we're not going to see
yeah.
them. Um, but yeah, Tom, as we talk about these these types of teams, these teams that are really trying to make this push to the finals, we thought we'd kind of go through some of the contenders here and just kind of give a um, quick little debate argument about whether we're in or out on them. We're going to go through the top 4 or 5 in each conference and just.
Yeah, let's go. Let's see.
Although I'm not sure if whoever's in.
Please hold.
Yeah, I'm not sure if whoever's in fourth or
The Clippers
fifth.
are 3 right now, but they're like knocking on the door of 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hmm.
Yeah, so just to start.
The East is an interesting one. I think the East, we realistically have 3.
Yeah.
Like, how about this? For the East, let's do a slightly different version of like who's the 4th team.
Okay.
And then for the West, we can just do in or out on the top 4.
Well, we have to do the top 5, don't we? Oh, I guess we just talked about Denver.
Yeah, the Lakers are the 5th team. Yeah, we should do the top 5.
Mm-hmm. I think we could make an argument to do in or out on the top 7, to be honest.
What an insane conference that is.
But yeah, why don't we start, because we were just talking a lot about the West, why don't we actually start with the East? Okay. Right now, Brooklyn and Philly are both 37 and 17. They're playing against each other tonight. However,
yeah,
Kevin Durant, James Harden, and LaMarcus Aldridge are all not playing. So it's not really going to be
Kyrie game.
Yeah, as interesting of a preview as we would have hoped.
No.
Philly currently holds the tiebreaker between them and Brooklyn, which is pretty important. So that makes this game have a little bit more importance there. I am fully in on Philly.
Really?
I think, I mean, they're elite defensively. They have two very clear go-to guys at the end of games in Embiid and Tobias Harris. They have a nice rounding out of shooters and defenders with Seth Curry, Korkmaz, Danny Green, Tybal. Good backup big in Dwight, even though he seems to be fouling out and getting technicals more often than he's doing other things this year. Dwight Howard. I think they're and then, at some point we'll see George Hill, I hope. I mean, he hasn't played yet. Yeah. But when he's in there, I think he'll make a good difference if he plays. If we're talking about like a 9, and then you also have like Philly has like their bench scorer prototype in like Shake Milton off the bench, who I know Philly fans find him to be a little feast or famine, a little inconsistent sometimes. But ultimately, I think if we're talking about the 8 or 9 off the bench, 8 or 9 on the team, I really like Philly's 8 or 9, and I think they can make the push. And in every series, they're going to have the best or second best player. So I think that matters too.
Yeah.
Oh, and I didn't even mention Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, who is, will probably end up being the runner-up to Defensive Player of the Year this year. And who has appropriately kind of deemed himself the best defensive player in the NBA, because there's very few guys like him that can guard 5 positions. And I think that is so valuable, especially if you're going to be going against teams like Milwaukee, teams like Brooklyn, where it's going to be very valuable to have a guy like Simmons who can switch. Yeah, I'm all in on Philly. How are you feeling on them?
I like Philly. I think one thing that I think they have that a lot of teams might struggle with, and it's a thing that struck me watching actually Portland last night, is they have multiple players that you can just give the ball to on like a clutch last 5 minutes of a game playoff game possession
Mhm.
and feel okay about. Like Tobias Harris, I feel like one of the things they've been doing with him is kind of making him um, that scorer a little more this year. Sorry, Joel Embiid having one of the best offensive seasons I think in NBA history for a
Mhm.
center. Would have to like run some numbers on that, but I feel like he's lighting it up this year.
Yeah.
Was an MVP contender until he got hurt, but yeah, Embiid in the post is somebody that you feel absolutely fine giving the ball to, and then if you have Simmons running a pick and roll with somebody, like that's a really really good probably third or second option.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think they'll be able to score in big spots, which is not a guarantee. I'm
yeah.
a Knicks fan. I see this every game.
Yeah.
Like you get to a point where you need someone, you need to have options to score, and not everyone does.
Yeah. Um, so just to clarify on the Sixers right now, um, they're the second best defense in the NBA. Um,
I'm
but the
still here. I'm just
okay,
relocating myself.
but only the 14th best offense, which is a little curious. They've kind of struggled, and that on that side of the floor this year. And I think, as much as I'm all in on them, I do think they can make the finals. I'll say the one thing that will hurt them, could hurt them potentially, and I hate to always bring it back to him, but like it is going to be teams game planning around Ben Simmons on offense, and just kind of trying to take him out. I mean, just forcing him to his weaknesses and making him kind of ineffective, and whether that just be sagging off and creating so much room in like a sort of clogged paint area, or whether that is forcing Simmons to like the predictability of Ben Simmons, where he doesn't always go. He's going to pass out of contact. He's going to, when he's driving, he is going to opt for the little floater or the little jump shot over driving for the layup, and or he'll opt to just pass out. That predictability of his offensive game might be the only thing that I think can hurt them. And then their inconsistent bench. Even though I like the bench, it's a little inconsistent. But
Yeah.
I can see a game. I can see them putting it together for 3 weeks in the playoffs, and
Oh yeah.
their shooting just kind of catching on fire. So yeah, I feel pretty confident about Philly, mainly because of their defense. Next up,
I think like
oh sorry, you go.
actually yeah no I had nothing really substantial to add. Who we got next? We got Brooklyn next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty in on Brooklyn. I don't have any Brooklyn
I
hot
feel
takes.
like it's tough to really find a new good thing to say about Brooklyn. Like we saw it for a couple of weeks there where it was like, oh well, we decided that well, they couldn't really defend when they were at full strength, but it didn't matter a lot of the time. Like it was like, all right, yeah, cool. They gave up 130 points last night. They scored 145. It didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing I will say that I've been surprised by with Brooklyn this year is like how well their role players have played.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even talking about like Joe Harris. I'm talking like Bruce Brown has been incredible for them. Nick Claxton they just found somewhere. And then obviously they've got a few people getting like that. Well, I'm finally where I would like to be, and I'm contending for a title. So now I'm gonna just play like I'm 5 years younger. Bump. Marcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin have been fantastic for them. I am interested to see how they look against someone like a Joel Embiid in the playoffs, but that's horse before the cart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's not much new to say with them.
No, what they have
right now. How do you?
What they have more than anyone else. Actually, I'd say what they and the Lakers have more than anyone else is like lineup versatility. We always talk about like what your five is going to be at the end of a game. With Brooklyn, you can roll out a bunch of different fives. I think, depending on your matchup.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait, Tom, we do have some breaking news.
Oh.
We have free agent guard Austin Rivers and the Denver Nuggets are in serious talks towards a deal. We can get to that when we talk about Denver.
Oh, wow.
But that would be a That would be a really nice move for Denver, I think. Although you might
Yeah, I
be
would like
better
that.
equipped to talk about that because you watched Austin Rivers kind of get played out of the rotation in New York this year. But let's talk about that
Yeah.
when we get to Denver, when we get back to the West.
Okay.
Um, but Brooklyn, your final five, obviously every final five is going to have KD, Harden, and Kyrie,
Yes.
and probably Joe Harris.
Yeah.
Um, and then for that last spot, you could go with Claxton, you can go with Jeff Green, you can go with Blake Griffin, you can go with LaMarcus Aldridge, you can go with DeAndre Jordan. I feel like it probably won't be DeAndre, but I feel like all those other guys have a decent shot of being that fifth guy. You can go with Jeff Green.
I also kind of wonder if it will wind up not being Claxton either,
Mm-hmm.
just because I feel like when you get into the playoffs and you get a little bit more intricate offensively,
Yeah,
I could see Claxton's inexperience kind of becoming an issue. But for right now, yeah, he's been awesome for them.
yeah,
I feel like it'll probably wind up being one of Blake or LMA.
yeah,
But it's a good point about the versatility. Like they can throw a lot of different looks at you.
yeah. So that's why I'd be scared about them, and I'm pretty all in on them. Do you have any more on Brooklyn?
Not a ton. I mean,
Yeah,
we've seen like they can turn it on for 10 minutes at a time and have that like that'll be enough.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, what do we need to say? They have three guys who at the end of the game can just find their way into getting a basket. So
Oh yeah.
no other team really has that.
Or honestly find someone else a basket, which is
Yeah.
terrifying. Like all three of them can kind of create at this point.
Um, so next up we have Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee right now. Let me get there.
Quietly in a bit of a funk.
Yeah. Um, Milwaukee right now is 33-20. They're fifth in offense and eighth in defense. So they're top 10 in both. That's
Yep.
good. Um,
Yeah.
but they've kind of had the issues of having guys in and out all year. Drew Holiday missed a lot of time. We both remarked the other day about how, Giannis is missing time right now.
Yeah.
They had this lineup the other day of, it was something like, I think their starting lineup was like Bryn Forbes, Jeff Teague, Jordan Nwora, Thanasis,
Yep.
something like that, and Bobby Portis.
It was
They-
a funky five.
Yeah, like they have been inconsistent, I think, just because of availability, really.
Yeah.
I have a tough time being in on Milwaukee. I'll be honest.
Really.
I don't see how what they have done this year has done anything to address their serious problems from last year.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
And maybe this is just being a little like cocky because I'm a Heat fan, but I am really comfortable. Like I feel comfortable facing them in a first round matchup, which is how it would look right now.
Yeah.
I just think they're always going to have this question of at the end of the games, we are going to go with Middleton over Giannis to score, which is just
Yeah.
it's weird, and it's the thing they've had to kind of deal with and decide on because it just generally works better because he can more easily create the shot off the dribble.
Yeah.
Not to
And
sound
can create without having to get to the rim, which is a big one.
yes,
Like,
and
because I
not,
feel like when you get into very half-courty games, like it's harder to just kind of take the ball at the three-point line, take two dribbles, or take one dribble and two steps and be at the rim.
yeah. Drew adds a lot for them.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know. I have a tough time seeing it. I feel like they're going to come into the same problems. People are going to build a wall around Giannis. They're going to force
Yes.
Middleton to take all the tough shots, which he can make, but it's kind of a heavy load. And then if you are any team, you should watch what like the Heat did to Milwaukee last year, which was play them to force them out of transition. Because Milwaukee thrives in transition because that's when Giannis is the best. You can't stop him. But if you force them to slow down into a half-court offense, it's going to be awkward. Another thing that I've heard, I'll be honest, I haven't watched them super closely this year, but I have heard on a couple different podcasts about how Milwaukee is trying to adjust their defense from last year, from like the drop-heavy stuff to switching a little bit more. But because Bud has been kind of anti-switching over the years. But apparently it's just, it's a change in progress. So there's a lot of little kinks in it. And
like that
I don't know.
Would be tough to get right away.
I'm not sure how much PJ Tucker's doing for them. I'm not sure how much Jeff Teague is doing for them. They're kind of in a similar spot to the Heat where their off-season additions, guys like DJ Augustine and who was their other one? Torrey Craig.
Bobby
Portis was one too. But like two of their major off-season additions, Augustine, Torrey Craig, both off the team 3 months later.
Oh yeah.
Because it just wasn't working out. And yeah. I don't know. I don't really like their 8 either. So
that's a fair comment.
Today, on today's game that's happening right now, actually, they're playing the Timberwolves. They're winning by 21 right now. But they're 3 off the bench. Now, again, Giannis isn't playing. But their first 3 off the bench is Connaughton, Bryn Forbes, and PJ Tucker, followed by Jeff Teague and Thanasis. And I don't know. I find that to be a tough bench to really win a lot of games with.
I feel like they're finally starting to crawl out of that thing that they've been in for the past few playoffs where it's like, yeah, we look great, but then like all of a sudden for some reason in like the fourth quarter of a second round game we're relying on a lot of Pat Connaughton shots.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they're better off the bench a little bit this year, but it is still, I don't know if they have like that dynamic playmaker off the bench they can really go to.
No, they don't. And I guess they think that it's going to be Jeff Teague.
Yeah.
But Jeff Teague was just, played out of the rotation in Boston, and they had no one on their bench.
Lost minutes to Peyton Pritchard.
It's tough. I'm going to say I really don't have faith in Milwaukee. I'd be shocked if they made the conference finals. We got to have some hot takes here.
I don't see. Well, no, it's tough because like there's not a world where Philly and Brooklyn meet in the second round.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Philly right now would draw, I don't know, the winner of like the Atlanta, Boston, Miami, Charlotte, New York race.
Yeah.
Like it's a 5-team or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's a 5-team race to just get boat raced by Philly in round 2. Like,
yeah.
Milwaukee probably runs into Brooklyn in round 2, and that's not a matchup I like their odds in. Even though, to be fair, they're one of very few teams that has 3 defenders that they could hypothetically match up with Brooklyn on. But then there's all the problems you just mentioned that like aren't going to go away. And even if you can defend, there's only so much you can defend all 3 of those players for all 48 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that covers all of my thoughts on Milwaukee too. I think, actually, one other thing. Again, something I'm kind of jacking from other more intelligent people who've talked about basketball. But
yeah,
I really want to see Milwaukee do more of the use Giannis as a screener for Chris Middleton at the end of games. I feel like that just makes so much sense in my head.
Yeah.
So maybe there is something obvious here that I'm missing. I'm not an NBA coach, but in my head, using Giannis as a screener who can roll, who's going to stop Giannis on the roll?
Yeah, he'd be an incredible dive man.
So yeah, I feel like that's something they should look at. I don't know. I'm sure they're looking at it. I'm not going to act like I have some insight that they don't have. So now, Tom,
You just reminded me of a very
Hmm.
you just reminded me of a very funny Zach Lowe line from a recent pod he did where he was talking about the Warriors, where they were talking about the idea of like, oh, we'll just play Steph more, and he was like, yeah, Steve Kerr's thought of that. Like, this isn't the kind of thing where like someone's gonna run into a meeting room and they're just gonna be like, oh, we should play Steph 38 minutes, and Steve Kerr will be like, wow, that's a good, like, I hadn't thought of that one. It is funny though, but I do think that's a good idea. Like, I don't mean to say that like they shouldn't do that, because I think that would work.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of touches into what you were saying about like maybe there's, I don't know, something we don't know, which would be odd, but I don't know what the thing would be that makes them say, no, we can't have Giannis sitting.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You know?
I think another thing here, like just to wrap up the Milwaukee talk, is like we have seen too many Coach Bud teams over the years have these like top 5, top 10 offenses in the regular season, and then just have a real inability to actually score in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
And I think this might be kind of a simplistic way to look at it, but until I see it work, I'm not gonna buy it.
I feel like that's where a lot of people are at with the Bucks at this point. Like, no, just go out and do it. Until you do it, we're not going to pick you to do it.
Yeah.
So now, this is where in the East we get to an odd spot in that one of Atlanta, Boston, Charlotte, Miami, and New York are all separated by 2 games. Right now, Atlanta's in pole position. They're sitting in 4th. One of these teams will have home court advantage in a first-round playoff series. Which of the 5 do you think it's going to be? Because, again, it has to be one of them. But I feel like we're in a spot where you could kind of make the case for any of them if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
You can make the case for or against a lot of these teams.
I hate to say it. I really hate to say it, Tom. I feel like it could be Boston.
They've looked really impressive lately.
They've been really good recently. I just got up last 15 games of the season. Boston has the 5th best net rating in the league. 6th best net rating in the league. With the 9th best offense and, sorry, I'm doing this so slowly, in the 8th best defense. They're on a roll. They had a super impressive win last night against Portland.
Coming off a super impressive win against Denver on Sunday, too.
Yeah. I feel like they make the most sense as a team that has kind of come on a little slow all year, has the inconsistencies that we've talked about, to just put together a 5-game winning streak at the perfect time and separate themselves from the pack. I hate saying this. It pains me to say this, but I really feel like they have the best shot here. I think the Heat's upcoming schedule, this 8-12, is going to kill us. We're going to go 3-5 in it, and it's going to hurt us. Hopefully we'll go 3-5. Like, I could see us doing worse. Atlanta is somehow really staying afloat despite Trey missing the last few games. I'm really not sure how. Brandon Goodwin has been starting in his place and playing really well. Someone who I was unfamiliar with about a month ago.
I was unfamiliar with Brandon Goodwin about a week ago.
Yeah. I don't really buy the Hawks as a playoff team, but I still don't think they have the defense to do anything in a series. And I think between Capella, Herter, and Trae Young, those are 3 guys in your starting lineup that are just going to 3 guys to be targeted on defense, and that's tough.
We saw Miles Bridges target Capella pretty effectively last week.
Do it like that, but And this is why I've been kind of keeping up a little bit with the Hawks, only because they have recently inserted Solomon Hill into their starting lineup. Um, they're like
Not a monster.
they're like 9-1 with him in the starting lineup right now, or something ridiculous like that. He just kind of adds like a competent defender. He's like a competent, 3-and-D type guy.
Yeah,
So it
he's
makes
what
sense.
we always say. He's a definite NBA player.
Yes. So I think Atlanta's on a roll right now, but I don't know. Part of me doesn't buy it. That's might be unfair. I just mentioned with the Heat, I think the Heat have completely turned their season around from when they were 7-14, but
Yes.
with the Oladipo injury and this brutal schedule we're about to see, I have a tough time seeing us getting to the fourth spot. Because every game matters here, and just losing three in a row during this stretch will kill you.
Yeah, that's enough to be. That's enough to be the difference between, I don't know, like fifth and eighth. Like, that's enough to get you into or out of the play-in tournament, which I think a lot of teams would be scared of. Is just like this idea that you could lose because you lost 2 games.
Yeah.
Or because you lost 1 game.
Yeah. How are you feeling about Charlotte and New York?
I don't think the Knicks are done. Like, I think they're going to be around. They got the Pelicans. They've got a little bit of a tough schedule coming up. They've got the Pelicans twice, the Mavs once, then Hornets, Hawks, Raptors, Suns, Bulls. So the good thing is they'll have an opportunity to pick up games on teams like Atlanta or Charlotte that they kind of need to pick up ground on.
Yeah.
And put some distance between themselves and the Bulls. But it's going to be tough. Like, I think they should beat the Pelicans, but also I could see this being one of those weird, like, well, yeah, they should have beaten them, but for whatever reason, the Pelicans are just giving them fits. I think they'll probably wind up being in the 7 seed, jumping Charlotte, just because I can't see this continuing without LaMelo. I mean, they're tied right now. But Charlotte, I guess, has some sort of tiebreaker.
Yeah,
but I think they'll wind up in the 7.
Yeah. With no LaMelo and no Hayward for a while, I don't see how Charlotte keeps this up. I feel like they're the most likely candidate to fall now. Yeah, I mean, the Knicks have actually
will make me very nervous in a play-in game, though, because, as I think I said earlier on this episode, like, late in Knicks games, for whatever reason, just winds up being a lot of, like, Alec Burks hero ball. And, like, he'll come down, miss a couple threes in a row, and then one possession, you'll have Julius Randle drive, kick to a wide-open R.J. Barrett, who nails a corner 3, and then you're like, cool, why can't we do this every possession? And that's... But for whatever reason, they don't. And so I think it's going to be... I could see the Knicks being a 7 seed and then losing in a play-in game.
Well...
Excuse me. They would need to lose twice to be out, though, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like right now, the Knicks would play Indiana in a
Who
play.
they've been good against this year.
Yeah. And I think you guys can... I mean, that's the kind of crazy advantageous part about the play-in thing, is that you guys just have to win 1 of 2. I mean, I feel like the Knicks are capable of doing that. Just one... The Pacers just need to have one game where their shots aren't falling, and then it's over.
Yeah. The Pacers versus the Knicks will be a very fun, just like, both of these teams are going to play defense and fight. Not fight in the terms of like throwing punches, but in terms of just like, they were just down 10 and now all of a sudden they've cut it to 4 because they just played really good defense for a couple possessions. Like, it would be a rock fight.
It would.
It would be a fun rock fight, but it would be a rock fight.
So out of those 5, who do you think is going to get that 4th spot?
I don't think it's going to be Miami, just because I do think that this upcoming stretch is going to be brutal. And like, even if they come out of this healthy and like 100%, that's like a lot of mileage in a very short time.
Yeah.
And you don't even know if maybe one night or a couple during that stretch, they kind of finagle a rest for someone in there. Like, I don't know. I don't know how they would get around the rest restrictions, but I feel like it's doable if you want to.
Yeah, they're doing it tonight. Dragic isn't playing tonight.
Perfect.
So see a lot of Gabe
So
Vincent.
yeah, I think Miami strikes me as the kind of team where they're like, no, if we wind up in sixth and we have to play the Bucks, we're fine with that.
Oh
like,
yeah, I think they want that.
Like they're in that weird spot that like contending teams get to, or like like top of the league, top of the conference teams get to, where it's like, yeah, man, we're just trying to get to the actual playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in that spot as a team that's like in the middle of the playoff race right now, but they have this kind of credential about them. It's like, no, we know we can do it if we get there. We just got to like get there, be healthy for it.
Yeah, it's weird.
That makes
it makes me very it makes me a little worried sometimes. This is the type of mindset that I hear also from the Heat post-game interviews and everything, where I feel like there is kind of I don't know. There seems to be a expectation from a lot of the guys that they're going to make it again to the finals. And I appreciate the confidence. Obviously, that is what you should say. But
yeah.
I do sometimes feel that same way where it's like they're treating themselves like they're the Lakers who are injured and falling to sixth.
And they're not.
But we're not.
No.
And right now, I mean, if Oladipo doesn't come back, it's gonna be tough. Like, because even
a lot scarier if Vic is out for any like serious amount of time.
Yeah, because even if he wasn't, he was his shot was not falling in any until the last game until he got injured.
No.
For the Heat, the first 3 games were rough, but he was still a really great impact guy out there. Just having another person that can dribble the ball and drive to the hoop is so impactful. And if it turns out that the Olynyk Bradley for Oladipo trade turns into we literally just lost 2 players and got no one back for the rest of the season because Oladipo was injured, and then we have it sucks, and then it will result in our point guard rotation in the playoffs will be Nunn, Dragic, and Vincent, which worries me.
Well, you could break out Point Tyler.
Yeah. No, we could. I mean, he worries me less than those other 3 right now.
Yeah.
I don't like Dragic has looked bad. Nunn is fine.
Never meant to be a playoff rotation player.
Yeah. Gabe Vincent, though, I will give him the respect of he tries really hard on defense now to the point where it's like kind of funny because it's just like you can see how hard he's trying. He's one of those guys where it's like I don't know if the IQ is 100% there, but the effort's always there, which I appreciate.
He's doing that thing that high school football coaches say, where it's like if you're gonna make mistakes, just make them at 100%.
Yeah,
just make them fast. Be flying around, even if you're flying around to the wrong spot.
It's like that, that clip of Colin Sexton guarding the 2 guys. Where it's like
shuffling,
trying to guard both of them at once. It's like that.
That's Gabe Vincent.
But yeah, I think that's all I got on the East.
The Western Conference?
Yeah. So ultimately on the East, I'm only in on Philly and Brooklyn.
I
am in.
Also, I'm less out on Milwaukee than you are.
Okay.
But it's gonna come down to Philly, Brooklyn, I think.
And I'll be very biased here. I'm in on the Heat as a 2nd-round team, like to make it there.
Oh, I would believe it. Yeah.
I think we can.
I think they're the most capable of beating one of those top 3 in a round 1 playoff series of any of the teams that aren't that.
And if that happens, then I mean, things are wide open. But who knows? Now let's move to the West, Tom.
Let's do it.
This is where it gets very interesting because I think we should talk about the top 7 teams.
Top 7.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's start with it. So,
like an internal sigh there.
make the case for Portland. Well, okay. Dallas, I feel like, is the simple, like, you don't want to play Luka in a playoff series. And, like, a lot of the pieces around him are starting to actually, like, form, and, like, that team is starting to take shape a bit.
Yeah.
And also, like, you look at the top of this conference, if they wind up in 6th playing the Clippers, like, you could talk yourself into Dallas winning that series.
Exactly.
If they wind up playing Phoenix, you could definitely, like, they'll have the best player on the court in that series every game.
Yeah. No, that's why
so, like,
I think we should talk about all of them. I mean, Dallas is also on fire. They are coming around at the perfect time. Over the last 15 games, they have been the 4th best team in the league.
Really?
Yeah, they've had the 4th highest net rating, and are, I don't know what their offense and defense is, but their 4th highest net rating over the last 15 games. They're looking really, really good. And look, I'm not in on them as a championship contender.
No. But
I am sort of in on them as a dark horse conference finals if they get the right matchups.
I could see it, actually. Like, it's gonna, like, I'm looking at the math right now of it. They're only a game behind. I feel like at this point you might rather play Phoenix than the Clippers in a round 1 series. Which is, like, a little counterintuitive, but I just don't see anyone on Dallas that's going to match up with PG and Kawhi defensively.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, because what happens there is you play Phoenix. If you're able to beat them, then
you play the Clippers.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
Yeah. There's also the weird, like, wrinkle in all of this, which is that the Lakers are without their 2 best players right now, and, like, will be for a little bit longer. And the Nuggets are now without probably their 2nd best player. So, like, Dallas is 5 games back in the win column of both of those teams. Could they catch up? Like, where the Lakers and Nuggets fall is going to be a weird thing to keep track of. Although I also don't know how far the Nuggets will fall in all this, because, as we've said, as long as Jokic is healthy, they can still go out and win games.
Yeah, and if they sign Austin Rivers, like we were hearing earlier, then you just put it's like the Moneyball thing, as we always go back to. It's like you're creating Jamal Murray between Rivers,
3 players,
Monty, and Campazzo.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst. Like, if you're starting out with Jamal Murray has torn his ACL, that's not the worst 3 to go to. But point being, you've actually talked me into Dallas being, like, a potential at least 2nd round team, just because, like, they could get a good matchup in the 2nd round or in the 1st round and scare somebody.
Yeah. I just want to get up there. So they had a tough game the other day. They lost pretty badly to Philly. But I do think I'm worried about them on defense.
Yeah.
A team that is playing a lot of Kleba, Melly, and JJ Redick is tough. But actually, as I was saying that, I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was, because between Josh Richardson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Dwight Powell, I think they can get away with what they're doing. But I don't know. It's not one
They're
of my.
Not a complete defensively.
No, it's not one of my favorite first 8. It's more like their first 4 or 3 is really good, and it's mainly because of Luka. But I also think and
then it's just a matter of, like, how far can that trio carry them?
Yeah, and then I really like. I mean, Richardson's been rough this year. He's so inconsistent. But I theoretically like Richardson, Brunson, Finney-Smith, and Hardaway as, like, got other guys who can, other good role players on this team. But I'd say that ceiling there. I'm I'm not in on a finals team as a finals team with them, but like I said, if the right matchups can be created, I could see them making it to the conference finals.
I think the interesting thing with the West that you don't have in like the East, you have the two clear best teams at 1 and 2, meaning anyone that wants to make like a surprise conference finals run is going to have to go through one of those teams, and it's not you don't really see a team that's going to be able to do that. Whereas in the West, it's like, all right, yeah, Utah's been great in the regular season, but like, are we like how much are we believing this?
Yeah.
Like Phoenix is really good in the regular season. How much are we believing this? Like when the Lakers are going to wind up being like the 6th seed. Like, how are we going to just put a ton of faith in Utah as, like, this unbeatable 1 seed? So that's, like, it makes it more fun to talk about, like, a Dallas and, like, actually more believable that they could be that surprise conference finalist.
Yeah.
Because, like, they could just – it's easier to see the trail of good matchups there.
Definitely.
Now,
so let's – okay, do you want to go down then? Go from 7 to 1?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Portland.
You just watched them last night, Tom. What did you see?
I think so. They actually were the team that like made me kind of think about it and go, okay, no, you know what? Like, they're winning all these close games, and like, I think Zach Lowe said they were like 9 games over 500 at one point, like within the past week, with a -10 point differential on the year, which kind of tells you a lot. Like, they win a lot of close games, but then if they lose, they're getting blown out. Which I think when you watch them play, you can kind of see where that they're not going to lose a lot of close games thing comes in, because they just have a lot of players that are like ready to shoot in big moments. And I know I said this in the preseason with specifically about Melo, but like if you look up and down that lineup, like Dame, CJ, Norm Powell, Melo, they have a lot of players that it's just like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm open on the wing for a 3. All right, yeah, I'll take it. Like, not afraid to shoot it. And that I think you need in the playoffs when like teams with one guy, and yeah, Dame is kind of a one guy on this team, but teams with like really one guy that can put up a shot ever, they're going to get schemed out of it. Like we saw it with Kemba Walker in the playoffs it was Kemba last year against the Raptors when Nick Nurse threw a box and 1 at him. And it was like, oh, well, this stifled the Celtics a bit, even though I think they wound up winning that series. But
they did, but I think I feel like everyone said that the Celtics had far more talent in that series, but it still went down to the wire of Game 7.
Yeah. So, like, I think for as much as it is going to be, like, how far can Dame take us, I think they have more pieces around him than they get credit for. Nurk is, like, a really good defensive center. I think the defense around Nurk is not going to be great. They kind of have locked themselves into this lineup where it's like, yeah, we've got 6'3" Norm Powell playing the 3. Dame is all of like 6'1" or 6'2". Like, CJ is not a fantastic defender, but like they're both guys you keep out there because of what they can do on offense. So I think the downfall for Portland is going to be, can they defend anybody? Like, can they get stopped when they need to? I still like them. Like, I still think they could easily win a round 1 series. Right now they're matched up against the Clippers, which would probably be the worst matchup they can find.
Yeah, no, that is the worst matchup.
Because like who's defending Kawhi? And that's like you're going to have Norm Powell out there playing against PG. This is not going to go well.
No.
It's funny. I feel like the Clippers actually present that problem for a lot of teams. Like even if you want to look at like Phoenix, like Mikal Bridges has been like a lot of fun to talk about this year, and like Cam Johnson's been a really fun role player for that team that we didn't see coming. Jay Crowder's having a good year, but like when you get into a playoff series against PG or Kawhi Leonard, guarding them is a different animal than like if you're Mikal Bridges just guarding like passing lanes on the weak side. Like I feel like the Clippers have that ability to put other teams' positives in a very harsh perspective.
Definitely.
So
what
do you think about them though? Because I think I'm in on them as a second round team. I don't see them making a conference finals.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know. I echo everything that you said. And I think not just Clippers. I really don't like their matchup against any of these teams.
No.
Um,
Like, I feel like
they just
even if you put them against a, sorry, you go.
it's just defensively really that what are they? They're the second worst defensive team in the league.
Who's the worst?
Sacramento.
Okay, yeah.
And just to give you an idea of how bad this is, they are a full Portland is a full 1.3 defensive rating worse than Minnesota, the league's worst team. The league's worst team that has had insane injuries all year and has barely had a consistent lineup for the whole season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just, this always comes back down to matchups, obviously. That's what the playoffs are. And I think any team can kind of match up kind of well against them. Even if Dame can kind of do his thing, I think in these games, you let Dame do his thing. Just don't let everyone else beat you. And you're going to be fine because you can do whatever you want to Portland on offense.
It's interesting because I almost feel like you can do the minutes, and then it's like, okay, we should probably crack down on some of these. But yeah, like they're. Ooh, sorry about that. Yeah, they're probably. I could see them maybe being a second round team if they get like maybe they could take on Phoenix. I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna wind up selling Phoenix very short in this exercise, and I don't want to, because I like what they've done this year. But like, I feel like they match up better against them than they would against like the Lakers or the Clippers or even Utah.
Yeah,
because they would really. I don't know. I think Gobert would give them some trouble, and they wouldn't have the answer that like Denver was able to find last year.
Yeah. Okay, so we're both kind of out on the Portland and Dallas as far as actually making the finals, which I feel like makes sense.
More in on Dallas as a conference finalist.
Yeah, no, me too. Then we have the Lakers. I don't think we need to talk that much about the Lakers. I'll say
I think both have them as a possible finals team.
Yes, easy possible finals team. I'd say similarly with the Nets, what I was saying before, the versatility that they can have with their final five is really interesting, especially with the addition of Drummond. You can throw out Drummond, you can throw out Marc Gasol, you can throw out Harrell at that 5 spot at the end of a game. You could. Do they have like a smaller big that they sometimes play at the 5? I'm trying to remember.
Well, I mean, if you want to go smaller bigs, you could even throw Anthony Davis at the 5 as like a depth center.
Yeah.
Which like they've been reluctant to do for almost 2 years now, and I get it. But like, if you really need to go scorched earth on a team, you could do that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, those are 4 options there that you can throw at the 5, and I really like the Lakers 8 or 9. And I think this, I don't want to get too into like the head games of all this, but I think having AD and LeBron be out for so long has to help a little bit guys like Schroeder and THT and KCP and Harrell. These guys who are sometimes, to the lesser extent, Caruso, but like those other guys who are responsible a lot for getting baskets, having these opportunities to try to create when there isn't LeBron and Anthony Davis on the floor too, I feel like is a good experience for the team this year. This is really like not connected. This is like really just putting it out there. No evidence to this argument, but I feel like you could make that argument.
Like the kind of thing the Lakers Twitter account would post.
Yes.
Like some sort of, I don't know, like Staples Beat posted, well, I actually think THT is going to go off with that. Like, it's the kind of like connect the thumbtacks on a corkboard theory. Yeah. That would be like, no, here's why LeBron going down is actually good for us.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So yeah, I have no reason to doubt the Lakers. I think they're going to be a nightmare matchup for anyone.
Oh yeah. Um,
I don't really have that much on the Lakers.
I don't have a ton either. Like I think the Drummond, I think the big thing with them recently has been that they're playing Drummond a lot and not a lot of Marc Gasol, which I think could just be like we're going to keep Marc fresh for the games where we need him.
Yeah,
It could also, I don't know.
it's kind of odd.
It's odd, but I am choosing to not believe that it's that big a deal because I think everything's ultimately going to be fine with them. I think we're both in on them as a finals team.
Definitely.
At least as a team that can make the finals. Like,
Yeah.
if they're at full strength come the playoffs, it'll be fine. Denver. Denver's an interesting one for a lot of reasons, mainly the discussion we had at the top of this show. Jamal Murray's not healthy.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about this at the top of the show. I could see them winning a round, but I can't really see that much else.
Yeah.
And I can only see them winning a round if they get
if they draw like Portland.
Yeah. It's if they draw Portland or
crashing out in the first round. Like it's the ceiling and the floor are lower with them now.
Yeah. I could also maybe see if they draw Dallas potentially because they don't have anyone that can guard Jokic, but
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I don't. If the Lakers are healthy and they get caught in a 4-5 with the Lakers, I really don't think it's going to go very well.
No, that would be bad. All that talk that we've been hearing about Michael Porter's defense improving would go right out the window.
Michael Porter will be played out. There's going to be a game where he plays 15 minutes, and it'll be everyone will be talking about it on Twitter, and then he'll have some post-game interview where he's like, I just feel like I need to get more touches.
It's so disappointing because they looked so good with AG.
Yeah.
And like this felt like a year where they could actually make a push. With Jokic playing like an MVP level and everything. But
yeah.
We talked about that at the top of the show. We want to move on. Number 3, the Clippers. How do you feel about the Clippers? Because I actually feel really good about them. But
yeah, I kind of feel good about them too. They've been playing really well recently. Paul George has kind of returned back to that when he came in third. Yeah, when he came in third in MVP voting a couple years ago. Kind of returning to that form, and is like statistically like one of the top 5 best shooters in the league this year.
My God.
You have the always sort of elusive idea of playoff Kawhi. Kawhi is one of those guys who will, with a guarantee, he is going to be at another level in the playoffs than he has been this season.
Oh, yeah.
Who have they just added recently? Well, they've added Boogie and Ronto. Yeah. Who? Boogie, I can't really imagine. I mean, the other night Boogie only played 5 minutes in a blowout. And I assume most of that time was garbage time. I really don't know if Boogie's playing that much for this team.
I don't think he will. I think there's also no pun intended, but there is the boogeyman of Serge's injury. Where it's a back injury, which are always tricky, and it seems like Ty Lue just doesn't really want to reveal too much about it. They're kind of doing the thing the Yankees do with Aaron Judge, where it's like, well, we're going to reevaluate it. He's going to be out tonight, and then we're monitoring it. That's the kind of thing that you want to keep an eye on, just because we don't know how long that'll keep going for. But if they're at full strength come playoff time, I think they would probably be the team. Short of the Lakers notwithstanding, they're the team that I would pick to make the finals.
Yeah, no, I think they've looked awesome. I mean, they're kind of. I think you messaged me last night. They're kind of quietly coming for that 2 seed. Phoenix just won't lose a game, so it's not really happening. But
They're 2 games back of Phoenix right now, but the big thing is that I think they're 3 back in the loss column.
Yeah. I will say though, my concerns. I don't know if I'm as in on the Clippers as you are, just because of my concerns with their role guys.
Yeah,
I just feel like the combination of Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Kennard, Batum, Patrick Patterson, Zubac are all guys that are. I don't know what I'm getting each night. Yeah.
and Terrence Mann.
And Terrence Mann. Yes. Terrence Mann, I feel like, is actually maybe one of the more consistent guys out of that bunch.
Yeah, like he's. I think Kennard is a fair one to have some questions about, given that like he was fully out of the rotation earlier this season and seems to be back in now, but like it doesn't seem like he's really like. I don't know. Like there's still some doubt there. Pat feels like the kind of player that could be inconsistent in a playoff series.
Mm-hmm.
Reggie Jackson, I wonder if ideally they don't play him a ton in the playoffs, just because like they've now added Rondo. If Pat Bev is back by then, like you'd probably like to play him over Reggie.
Yeah.
So like, but assuming he's on the court, yeah, I could see it. Nick Batum looks surprisingly frisky defensively, I will say.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who is like well into his 30s, yeah, looks very spry on the defensive end. I think the worry with him is, will he shoot in big games? Like,
Yeah.
he seems like someone that's pretty conditioned to be like, no, just find an opportunity to kick to someone who is a better shooter than you.
Yeah. No, yeah, I feel confident to a certain degree, but at the same time, we like this is kind of a similar thing with Milwaukee of just like I gotta see them.
Yeah,
I gotta see it,
no, that's fair.
because
And like, there's real stuff with Phoenix to be worried, or with the Clippers to be worried about. Like,
Yeah.
a full strength Lakers team, I don't know if they have as many concerns.
Yeah, so Clippers, honestly, I think I need to watch a little bit more to get a better idea. I do like how they've been playing, and I really like how
I'm in
Paul.
on the potential finals team.
I'll go with conference finals. I don't know if I can say finals yet, but I'll think about it.
Okay.
Then we got the
You wanna
big.
move on to-
Yes, we kind of talked about these two together last week.
Yeah.
They had a really good game against each other last week. The Jazz and the Suns went into
Suns wound
overtime.
up winning, I believe.
The Suns did win.
Yeah.
I believe they're 2-0 against the Jazz this year now.
Interesting.
This is tough. I think it's interesting to talk about these two together because they are both new to the top of the standings here.
They're new money Western Conference teams.
Yeah. We don't know what to make of them. Utah has been the best team in the league all season. They haven't wavered once.
No.
Every time everyone's like, oh, their shooting's going to calm down, it doesn't, or they find some new way to score.
Or like it does like a couple days, and then
Yeah.
it comes right back up.
Phoenix has been the best team in basketball, I think, since the beginning of February. So these are the two best teams in the league this year. Like, if we're just going by record-wise, if we're going by rating-wise. Well, actually, let me check rating, like net rating-wise. I don't know if they actually are. Record-wise, they are. And rating-wise, they also are. So there's a reason there's a reason they're the two best teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone comes into a discussion about Utah and Phoenix with a little bit of skepticism.
Yeah, which is natural. Like they're good teams that weren't that good last year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Utah was a playoff team that lost in round 1 to an actually really good Denver team, and then Phoenix got really hot in the bubble. But like, there's levels to this.
Yeah. I'm trying to not just be like, I promise this isn't me trying to be hot takey or anything. I kind of buy. I'm kind of more in on Phoenix.
Really, actually, because I feel like I am too.
Um, it's definitely for the reasons that we were talking about last week, where I feel like they have the better types of playoff scorers.
Yeah,
After, like, besides Mitchell. So after Mitchell on the Jazz, you have, Ingles, you got Gobert, Clarkson, Bogdanovich,
Conley.
Conley. That is a lot of firepower.
Yeah,
But I kind of just like the full picture of Phoenix a little bit more. I like the
fair.
shot profile between Booker and CP3 in a playoff game. I like how much they get out of Cameron Payne and like Javon Carter at the end of games. Or not at the end,
Cam Payne and Cam Johnson.
yeah, Cam Johnson, the crazy wing duo of Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder.
Yeah,
And DeAndre Ayton has become a very formidable defensive center, and
yeah,
um, like his offensive stats have gone down this year, but it's really just because he's taking way fewer shots.
yeah.
And I think that's more by design than some sort of like intentional part of his game, some sort of like part of his game falling off. So
I think the interesting thing with Phoenix matching up against Utah too is like, well, actually, the interesting thing with Phoenix against Utah is like they would match up really well against them.
yeah,
Not that they're gonna play probably because I don't see both of these teams make the conference finals. But I don't know. I think Phoenix is harder to find like an area to attack. Where Utah, it's kind of like, all right, yeah, they do this fun ball movement offense that like could maybe fall apart in the playoffs with just like when the defense gets a little better. Defensively, it's Rudy and then a few minus defenders. I mean, Joe Ingles is very good. But like you said, like the whole package with Phoenix, I feel like is a little bit better than with Utah when you talk about them in like a playoff series.
yeah. And I think you have the obvious, the sort of issues that we talked about last week with Utah with guys like Clarkson. How much does he end up playing in the playoffs with his kind of like
Yeah,
defensive limitations? I should say we talk about this. Utah is fourth in defense this year, and Phoenix is fifth.
hasn't become a problem yet.
Um, so I mean, Utah has the defensive player, the likely defensive player of the year. So I don't know. I think this really just boils down to both of these teams are going to grind out close games in the playoffs, I think. And
Here's my question:
mm,
Who who do you feel better about scoring in a clutch game, Phoenix or Utah?
this is tough because it's all right. I'm going to give the argument for both. The argument for Utah would be that obviously
Yeah,
Mitchell's fantastic in this scenario, and they have like a million good shooters around him
yeah,
that can get open and hit a big shot. Um, and he's a really good one-on-one player for these scenarios too. I
oh
think
yeah.
though you might have more options on Phoenix. I don't know. I really like.
That's that's where I kind of settled with it. It's like, no, yeah, like Donovan Mitchell is great, but like I'll take a Devin Booker possession over like a Donovan Mitchell drive and kick to Joe Ingles.
Yeah,
Like I don't know. I feel like Phoenix in close games does this thing where it's like, all right, yeah, Chris Paul takes one or two, and then Devin Booker takes one or two, and like they'll be able to sort of hunt for the better look for one of those two guys a little bit more effectively than a Utah might be able to for Donovan Mitchell.
yeah.
Um,
Um, also,
I
I'm
think I'm more in on Phoenix,
mhm.
but continue.
Just trying to get some bench point stats here. Last night, the Heat so I'll admit this might be a little biased. The Phoenix like eviscerated the Heat last night. It was a very
It was
weird.
an ugly game.
a weird game where it was for 2.5 quarters. It was pretty close, and the Heat were actually winning. The Heat were winning for the first quarter and a half. Then Phoenix just kind of took it over for the last 2.5 quarters, and then just made it a 20-point game, just kind of all of a sudden. They could take away so many of the Heat's options on offense, and they had so many guys that could just come in off the bench and make shots. Torrey Craig was really good last night, hitting a lot of open threes. Cam Johnson was really good. Cam Payne was really good. And Utah obviously has really good bench players as well. And then Phoenix also has Saric. But wait, let me get up the Utah rotation. I mean, they got Favors, Ingles, Clarkson. Ursan Ilyasova's getting some run recently. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is so hard to say. I kind of want to wait and see on this. But I like the shot profile of Devin Booker and Chris Paul at the end of the game over whatever Utah's given me.
Here's another question I have. If Phoenix is 1 and Utah was 2, like if those roles were switched, are we talking about Phoenix the same way we're talking about Utah? I feel like we're not. I feel like it would be similar, but I feel like we're quicker to be like, this Utah thing isn't real than we might be if it was Phoenix.
Yeah, I think because like the biggest difference between Utah this year and the last couple of years is really just like their shooting has kind of taken a whole nother leap, and Mitchell's taken a leap on offense. And I just feel like I think Mitchell will be awesome in the playoffs again, but I could just see the shooting kind of calming down in the playoffs. Phoenix
I also
feels like
the Chris Paul has something to do with it.
Yeah, the Chris Paul effect. Phoenix kind of feels like a fully fleshed out contender. I kind of wish they had one more guy to just get on, like put the ball on the floor and score. That's really all I wish they had. But I also say one of my few good preseason takes was predicting that I thought Phoenix would be really good. And this is true, so and this has become true, and I want to hold on to that and ride this into the sunset with them.
So ultimately, we're both more in on Phoenix than we are on Utah. But do either of us see either of those teams as a finals team?
Yeah. No, I can.
You were quick to it. Some party wants to say yes.
A part of me wants to say yes, but I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of both of them as finals teams, I'll be honest.
Is it like a you haven't done it yet skeptical, or is it like a I see this falling apart once teams start to care a little more skeptical?
It's to get the finals, each of these teams are going to have to beat the Lakers.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not any more complicated than that.
Yeah. Like, to get to the finals, they'd probably have to beat, like, one of the LA teams and then the other of these two teams.
Yeah.
Like, the road through the West is really hard, and I know that seems reductive, but as we sort of land the airplane here, I think that's a good thing to remind everyone of, is that, like, yeah, whoever makes it out of the West is going to be really battle-tested.
Yeah.
And, like, there's not going to be a scrub in the Western Conference playoffs. Like, Luka Doncic is on the 7th seed. So, yeah, basically, if we say we're not really in on a team as a finals team, it's not that big of a slight. It's just they may not be able to make it through a really hard playoffs.
Yeah. Watch us have these long discussions here and long playoff preview discussions in a couple of weeks when the playoffs are set.
Yeah.
And then it's just Lakers, Brooklyn.
I think I picked that preseason, so I would be very happy with it.
You did.
But also, like, yeah, it would be very funny to watch both of us, like, stress over how Jordan Clarkson's defensive minutes are going to factor into the playoffs, and all of a sudden it's like, of course the Lakers were going to make it.
Yeah.
But unless you got anything else,
no, yeah.
we probably
On that note of pessimism,
yeah.
that,
A nihilist ending to Tom and Dave.
yeah. Again, I mean, I'll go slightly. Actually, no, I'm not going to make a playoff prediction until we have the playoff team set.
So we know exactly what the field looks like.
Yeah,
That's smart. That's a good idea.
yeah. I think we'll do in a couple weeks. We'll do. I mean, I don't know when the season ends. I think it ends in like 3 weeks or something.
Yeah, but we can probably get like an Eastern and West. We could probably do like a play-in tournament preview, and then once that is settled, a full playoff preview for each conference.
Yeah, that'll be great. But yeah, I don't have anything else. Do you?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this. Hope everyone
man.
has a good night. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. And yeah, I'll see everyone next week.
All right.